have half a slot, so 10 minutes. I'll try and get through this quite quickly. And you've already heard about Madagascar once already. Can you hear me? Okay, so yeah. So Madagascar is well known as a biodiversity hotspot. It's globally important. We know that's 14,000 species of plants. More than 90% of those are endemic to Madagascar. And as James said earlier, and he alluded to, one of the challenges of conservation and restoration is that many species have very restricted distributions. You're only known from one or two small patches of forest. Along with that, there's very high rates of deforestation. And if I was to sum up the situation in Madagascar with one word, it would be food. It's all about food in Madagascar. Food shapes the landscape in terms of food production. We've got rice, there's dry rice in Madagascar and wet rice, but also conversion of forest into charcoal. So producing food or cooking it. Those are the main drivers. In Madagascar, there are 20 million people who rely on subsistence farming. It's one of the poorest countries in the world. And their main tool is fire. And fire is a pretty blunt tool. And I've just put up a quick map of fire data from NASA, from the MODIS satellite system. 3 months worth of fires, and the satellites pick out fires over 1,000 square meters. And as you can see, fire happens throughout Madagascar, from the humid forests in the east to the dry forests in the west. And this is why, if you're talking about conservation and restoration in Madagascar, it's that you have to start with the communities. So we're only just starting, the Q team in Madagascar, we're only just starting restoration. We've been given a chance through funding from the British government, through the Darwin Initiative, for our Madagascar Agroforestry Livelihoods project. So we're 2 years in, we're just starting out, we're not experts. And the point of the project, our main aim, is to engage communities and putting trees back into the landscape. So we're doing restoration as part of that, but we're also doing agroforestry and rehabilitation. Rehabilitation, planting trees around communities, trees with usefulness, not necessarily native trees, but useful trees. As James has said, Madagascar over the last 10 years has been developing a new protected areas system, which covers 10% of the land surface. Now, Madagascar embraced the Durban Accord very enthusiastically, so the new protected areas are all managed as a collaboration between conservation organisations and local communities. So economic development is hardwired into the conservation system in Madagascar. And as part of that, most protected areas have management plans which include restoration. So for our Agroforestry Livelihoods project, which includes restoration, we have 3 project partners. KNTC, our local team in Madagascar, Nitan Sika, which is a development NGO with 20 years of experience of extension work with communities, and then SNGF, which is the local seed bank, and they have experience of setting up tree nurseries with communities. So at Tremor, this is a site that we manage, Q. It's 250 square kilometres, the protected area itself, and then another 500 square kilometres of community lands around the protected area. It's in the Central Highlands, very similar to Ankatha Bay, but further south. It's a quartz plateau, so it's covered in this quartz gravel. And in amongst the quartz gravel you have interesting plants like this Pachypodium. We've recorded over 500 species of plants. So on top of the fact that 90% of those 500 species are endemic to Madagascar, we have 10% of those plants, over 50 species, are only found through the Tremor Massif itself, so they're locally endemic. We have 3 species of palms. This is a critically endangered palm, Diptis decipiens. We have another species, Diptis angustri, which is only known from 40 adult trees. So there's a range of habitats, along with the grasslands, where the palms are. We have species-rich humid forest, gallery forest, along the river courses. We have 6 species of pandanus, for example, the centre picture at the top, which indicates humid forest. And then above the humid forest and the slopes, we have a dry savanna woodland type of tapir forest. So the second area we're working in, part of the project, is a COFAD protected area. That's Mustra Gondroso Forest Corridor. It's not easy to say COFAD. And that's 2,800 square kilometres, and it's a protected area set up by Conservation International. So the main driver of forest loss there is slash and burn cultivation, shifting cultivation. And the forest loss is about 40% per year. And so here, our main aim is to replace that shifting cultivation. The farmers are driven to cut down a new patch of forest every year, burn it to get a flush of nutrients to grow their crops. Replace it with static agriculture around their communities. So it's about rehabilitating the slopes, the deforested slopes around the communities. And then we're also restoring the forest, which in a lot of places is just restricted to the ridge tops now, a long way from the villages. So we have the forest restoration balanced by increasing productivity on the deforested slopes around the communities. So we work through community associations at all our sites. So at Tremor there's 10 community associations and COFAD for 20. So each community has an association. We work on the management of the reserve and the restoration. And each association we've built a tree nursery. And so we employ technicians in the tree nurseries. Now they get paid for the work they do, but we pay them through the community associations. And the point is that they have a sort of social obligation, social contract with the associations to do the work. We didn't want to see the project to be seen, the benefits of the project to be seen in terms of the employment that we were giving, which is just accrued to certain individuals. We wanted it to be a contract with the community. This is why we're working through the associations. So 30 communities and 30 tree nurseries. So along with that, we're training the communities and our extension workers on the project on how to undertake restoration and agroforestry. And in COFAD, in the northern part anyway, there's an established nursery near Amman, and we do training courses there, and participants get certificates. But in the more outlying parts of both Trem and COFAD, then we have a roadshow which pitches up in a village, and we give demonstrations, slideshows. And as the sites are so large and the roads are so poor, it can actually take 1 or 2 days to get to the outlying communities in the area. And we also communicate through radio shows. So Hugh's part in this, we undertake surveys, working on species to plant, and also the monitoring. When we started the project, we had anticipated that we would develop participatory monitoring with the communities, which has actually turned out to be quite expensive. Through negotiation with the communities, we've moved more towards using remote sensing. They also have to do farming as well as work on the project, so their time is quite precious. So we're now using a mixture of remote sensing and a bit of ground truthing with the communities, where the community technicians have GPSs and cameras, which are GPS enabled. And in a couple of months' time, we'll be taking out a drone for the first time and looking at the success of tree planting. So in Tremor, the focus of our restoration is tapir forest. Now, tapir forest is characterised by a species of tree called Alpaca bourgeois, which is endemic to the central parts of Madagascar. And Tremor is one of the main areas where we still find tapir. And associated with tapir trees, there's an endemic silk moth. And Tremor is one of the main areas where silk is produced. But traditionally, the cocoons are harvested and buyers will come to the region and basically rip off the community, buy at a low, very low price the cocoons, and all the processing is done elsewhere. And so we're working with the communities, we're training them how to grow silk moths. We've got cages in the woodland, we've got eggs and stops them being predated. And we're beginning, next year we'll be starting to work on training the communities to give added value to the silk, so spinning, dyeing and weaving. And I have to admit, this, the bottom right-hand picture is a Missouri Botanic Garden technician from a similar project at one of their protected areas, Botanic, where they've taken their silk production a stage further and are doing the weaving as well. But that's what we intend to do next year. So the restoration has an immediate value for the community, increases silk production, and then we're building in this added value which will increase in yields. At COFAV, which is humid forest, what we want to do is we don't just want to make our communities better subsistence farmers, we do actually want to increase incomes significantly. And so at COFAV we've focused on vanilla and essential oils. Essential oils haven't worked particularly well because we had the great idea of producing essential oils of an endemic tree, Ravensara and Lauraceae, but lots and lots of projects have had the same idea and we haven't been able to sell the essential oils we produce after investment in stills and presses and all the paraphernalia training. But we've done a lot better with vanilla, and we've done it the other way around. We started off by finding an international buyer for vanilla. Now, communities in COFAV always produce a little bit of vanilla, but again, they were ripped off by buyers who used to come in from the north and pay very, very low prices for their vanilla. And vanilla is great for conservation because actually it's, as you probably know, it's an orchid, it's a climber, it climbs up trees. So actually you have trees in a vanilla production system. Anyway, so we found an international buyer first, a multinational company, it's a German company with an ethical policy. And we brought down from the northeast of Madagascar some Simrise technicians to train our communities, and we built a vanilla curing plant. We trained our communities to produce vanilla. So the first year we've done this, we bought from the communities 1 ton of green vanilla pots. So we did the buying and we paid a big price for the vanilla pots, more than the communities were getting anyway. And then we did the processing ourselves, employing community technicians. And then we sold the 200 kilograms of cured vanilla to the international buyer. The idea being that we would recycle the proceeds, reinvest it in the project, and expand to other areas. Well, we didn't quite do enough this year, 200 kilograms, we only just broke even. But next year we're planning to buy 5 tons of green vanilla and produce 1 ton of the cured pots. And I think the price was about $26 per kilo. So potentially this will enable us to scale up throughout the COFAV area. So for the restoration, we haven't been particularly successful for a number of reasons. Our tree nurseries are only producing 30 to 40% of the trees that we need to restore the area that we promised in our initiative when we devised the project. And that's happened for a number of reasons. One is we're a little bit over-optimistic about what communities can do, and they also have to do farming. But also there were technical problems. Steve Blackmore talked about the seed supply earlier, and that's been a real problem for us. We just can't get the seeds for restoration. We've also had low germination and low seedling success in the nurseries. And one thing we just didn't think about when we were devising the project is that our tree nurseries are 20 to 30 kilometres from the planting sites. And that's how far the forest is now from the communities. So the next stage of the project will be working on overcoming these technical problems. The communities also have a preference for eucalyptus, and to be honest, we have planted some eucalyptus. It's quick growing, and everybody knows eucalyptus in Madagascar, and it's the tree against which everything else is measured. But we're working on that, and we're shifting the focus to native species. But to sum up, I would say that the success of the project so far has actually been the enthusiasm which the communities have embraced the project. They want to work with us. And that's a big win for us, because our communities, they're on the edge of survival. Malnutrition is chronic over lots of Madagascar, and they're risk averse. They do what they do, even though they know that some of the things they do are environmentally damaging. It's harder and harder to survive on the same land. But they only know how to grow food in one way, or particular ways. And so they're risk averse to new ideas. It's a hard sell. Even if you have the best idea in the world, parachuting is actually very difficult to convince people. So getting the communities on board has been a key success, even though we've had a few technical problems. So just to finish up, this is the last slide, our future plans. Coming back to fire ecology, in order for our restoration and conservation efforts to be successful, particularly in the Central Highlands, we have to understand fire ecology, fire management, and we're going to be relating 25 years of fire history against current vegetation and species distributions to help us arrive at the best management for biodiversity and productivity. We're also going to take on some more science. Our remit is actually more research than practical management. So we're going to take on a number of new sites which represent the different habitat types in Madagascar: semi-arid, dry, humid, littoral forest, and the upland sites. And then we have a new project funded by the Western Foundation, which funding that Paul Smith got for the Millennium Seed Bank before he moved on to the BGCI, and that is to prioritise 500 of the most threatened species of tree species in Madagascar for seed collecting. And what we've realised in Madagascar, there are 4,000 species altogether of trees. We just don't know very much about them. So we're going to try and overcome this problem of seed supply and seed conservation of the most threatened species. And as part of that process, we're going to do basic ecological profiling, including relating species to the climate, geology, looking at nitrogen fixes, working out the best pioneer species. And this will inform restoration work. And I guess the last thing we're going to do is embrace wholeheartedly the Ecological Restoration Alliance, because one thing we want to do is to begin to tap into a lot of the expertise out there, the new techniques, the best practice which is emerging from all of your projects, so that we've got a larger pool as possible of expertise to draw on. And within Madagascar, we started talking with James Aronson and Stuart about their initiative to set up a Madagascar restoration network, so that all the restoration projects in Madagascar can learn from each other, their successes and their mistakes, and hopefully we can build up some momentum with all this. Anyway, that's me finished from Madagascar. Over to you.